Let's take things one step at a time. My name is Kira, and I was 12 when my life went to hell. We lived in a two-bedroom apartment on Maple Street in Cincinnati, Ohio. It was me, my parents, and my two older brothers, Jacob and Ethan. Jacob had just turned 16, and Ethan was 14. We were an ordinary family, like thousands of others. My father, Mark Miller, worked at a logistics company downtown. My mother, Sarah Miller, worked part-time as a cashier at the grocery store across the street. On Sundays, they'd gather the family for dinner. It was a tradition: chicken noodle soup, mashed potatoes with meatloaf, and sweet tea. I always felt out of place in this cozy scene. It wasn't that my brothers and I looked exactly alike, but they were carbon copies of our parents. Jacob had my dad's eyes and his habit of frowning when he was concentrating. Ethan had my mom's smile and a nervous habit of tugging on his hair. And me, I was the genetic flaw, a glitch in the programming. When relatives came to visit, they'd coo. Oh, Jake is just like his dad, or Ethan is the spitting image of Sarah when she was young. Then they'd look at me and just say, and that's Kira. Period. The conversation would immediately shift to the weather or gas prices. In recent months, something strange had been happening at home. My parents would whisper in the kitchen, assuming we were asleep. My mother would often emerge from the bathroom with red-rimmed eyes, and my father started staying late at work, sometimes not coming home until after midnight. Jacob never noticed. He was either on his phone, texting friends on Instagram, or off with them somewhere. Ethan was always at the community youth center after school, practicing with his basketball team. And I was at home, feeling the air grow thicker with unspoken tension. That Sunday started like any other. Mom made roasted chicken and mashed potatoes. I guess it was some kind of special occasion. Dad turned on the TV in the kitchen, where the news droned on about another hike in utility rates. Then he muted the sound and looked at us. Kids, he began. And I immediately knew something was about to happen. Mom and I have something to tell you. My stomach twisted into a knot, like I was about to take a test I hadn't studied for. Jacob looked up from his phone, and Ethan stopped chewing. We're getting a divorce, Mom blurted out, as if swallowing a bitter pill. The silence was so profound we could hear the loud arguments coming from the neighbor's apartment next door. Ethan was the first to react. What's going to happen to us, he asked. Don't you worry. Mom reached out to pat his hand. We'll figure it out. Nothing will change for you. We both love you. Dad added in that same tone people use when lying about Santa Claus. This is between us. You have nothing to do with it. Jacob relaxed upon hearing this. So, we'll be staying with one of you. Right. That's right. Dad confirmed. Ethan returned to his food, and I watched my parents exchange glances as if they were having a wordless conversation in a secret language. I realized they were lying. They were keeping something from me. Something important. The next few weeks passed in a blur. My father moved into a rented studio apartment in the city. My mother started picking up extra shifts. Now, at the grocery store from morning until night. Jacob was never home. It was either his part-time job as a delivery driver for a food delivery service or spending time with his friends. Ethan went straight to practice after school, then did his homework and went to bed. And I sat alone in the empty apartment, thinking, maybe it's because of me. Maybe if I weren't here, they wouldn't have gotten divorced. The district court hearing was scheduled for a Thursday. Mom said we all had to come, to be in the know. It was fine. We could miss school. The courtroom looked like a school auditorium, but gloomier. Wooden benches, a seal on the wall, the judge at a high table, a woman in her 50s in a black robe, lawyers in suits, rustled papers, ordering, incomprehensible terms, property division, determining the children's place of residence, alimony obligations. Then the judge asked, how do you plan to resolve the issue with the children? My father uttered the words that would cut my life into a before and after. Your Honor, given my financial situation after the division of property, I am prepared to take custody of one child. My eldest son, Jacob. He paused. He's already 16. He's practically working part-time. The words struck me like a lightning bolt. One child. Do Ethan and I not count? It was my mother's turn. I agree with my ex-husband. With my salary. She hesitated. I will take Ethan. He's 14. And he'll be able to work part-time soon. 2. What about the youngest daughter? The judge asked, leafing through the documents. Kira, 12 years old. My parents exchanged glances, and Mom pronounced the verdict. Kira still has a lot of growing to do. It's a lot of expenses. School, clothes, extracurricular activities. Mark and I have come to a decision. Neither of us can take on her upbringing. The words reached me as if through cotton wool. Neither of them can. The judge wrote something down about me. The child will be temporarily placed in a family placement center until the custody issue is resolved. We agree. My parents said in unison. My ex-parents. And then I lost it. That's not true. You can't just throw me out. I'm your daughter. 2. I jumped up from the bench. Ask me what I want. The judge banged her gavel. Girl. Sit down. This decision was made in your best interests. In my best interests, I was screaming now. Tears streamed down my cheeks. Are you kidding me? 2 bailiffs approached me from either side. Let's go. One of them said, tapping me on the elbow. Don't make this complicated. They led me out of the courtroom. I turned to look back. Jacob was buried in his phone. Ethan was looking out the window. Mom was dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Dad was signing something. No one said goodbye. No one even looked in my direction. The Rosewood Family Placement Center was located in an old building that had once been a kindergarten on the outskirts of Cincinnati. Gray walls. Small barred windows. The smell of bleach in the hallways. It wasn't a traditional orphanage, but more of a transit point for people like me. I was assigned to a room with 3 other girls. There was Brittany, Shiwu, who had been there for 6 months because her parents were addicted to drugs. Maria, sure, cried herself to sleep every night, calling for her mother, who had passed away. Her father was never in the picture. And Jessica, my age, a professional shelter resident, had been bouncing around various centers for 2 years. The main thing is, don't get used to it. She told me that first night, if you get used to it, it hurts more when they leave you again. I kept waiting for it to be a mistake, for my parents to come to their senses and come get me. I called Jacob. His line was busy. Ethan hung up on me. On the 3rd day, I got through to my father. Kira, that's enough. His voice sounded irritated. What's done is done. You need to move on. But I want to go home, I pleaded. It will be better for everyone. You'll understand when you grow up. And then the line went dead. Mom held out longer. She answered on the 5th ring. Why did you leave me? I cried into the phone. Someday you'll understand. Her voice was cold and alien. It's for the best. After that, their numbers stopped answering. They were probably blocked. I decided that since they'd erased me from their lives, I'd erase them. Let them choke on their so-called happiness. Social services told me they would find a wonderful foster family for me. They told me, as if reading from a script, about loving parents who dreamed of having a daughter, a full house, a happy childhood. Ali. Of course. The Robinsons were the first family. They lived in an apartment in a high-rise building, in a residential area. 2 boys younger than me. Already in foster care. Mark Robinson, a bank teller at Chase Bank. And Laura, a stay-at-home mom. It's quite possible to live on foster care benefits if you have several children. Here's your room. Kiki. Laura showed me a small room with pink wallpaper. I hope you like it. I didn't like it. Not the room. Not the people. Not their fake care. At dinner, they asked about school and my hobbies. Like something straight out of a foster parent's manual. I decided to test their patience. I refused to do the dishes. I was rude. And I played my music as loud as it would go. It lasted for 2 weeks. We're very sorry. Laura told social services. But we can't cope. The girl has a complex personality. The second family, the Snyders, lasted 3 weeks. They were an intellectual couple from downtown. He taught history at the local high school. And she was a librarian. They tried to approach me scientifically, dragging me to the school psychologist and suggesting family talks over tea and cookies. I wore them out with my defiance and demonstrative ignoring. The third family gave up after 10 days. By then, I had perfected my tactics, slamming doors so hard the neighbors complained, refusing to eat their disgusting food, and starting arguments out of nowhere. I wanted every family to understand they were all the same. The Snyders sat me down in the kitchen and tried to have a heart-to-heart talk. Let's discuss your feelings. Your anger, they suggested. Screw your feelings. I just wanted to be sent back to the center so I could prove to myself that no one needed me. Period. The fourth family held out the longest, for a whole month. They had a daughter a year older than me. And at first, they tried their best to create a sense of belonging. I quickly corrected that, convincing their daughter that my parents loved me more and engaging in daily fights with her. Eventually, even they couldn't take it anymore. Over the years, I was in 4 different families. I celebrated my birthday with a single candle on a grocery store cake and tea in chipped mugs with children I barely knew. Social services kept repeating, Kira, you're your own worst enemy. Give people a chance. I don't want your chances. I snapped. She didn't understand. I wasn't sabotaging. I was defending myself. If you don't let them get close, they can't abandon you. It was simple survival math. You're a smart girl. She sighed after another return. Why complicate things? Why simplify them? I retorted. Don't I need a family that loves me? I had a family that was supposed to love me. And where are they now? She made notes on her tablet. Probably writing about behavioral problems and a difficult teenager. Let the truth be better than a sweet lie. The center became more of a home to me than any foster family. Everything was clear there, routine and rules. No illusions. No one expected gratitude or happy smiles. The other children understood without words. We were all rejected here. I began to get used to the thought, this is how I'll live. Moving from place to place. Unneeded. Maybe some people are just destined to be single. But one day, my social worker came with news. Kira, here's the deal. Your distant relatives want to meet you. What relatives? They heard about your situation through your mother's side of the family and want to talk. I shrugged. I don't know any relatives. If they're anything like my parents, they'll change their minds quickly. They say they're very nice people, and they don't have kids. That's what hooked me. No kids. No competition. No one could be better than me. The next day, my social worker sat me down in her office and put her phone on speaker. Hello. Kira. A woman's voice was warm and genuine. This is Aunt Linda, your mother's cousin. And Uncle David is next to her. Hi. I muttered. We found out what happened with your parents. We're so sorry you had to go through that. I remained silent. This was the first time anyone had apologized to me. I understand. It sounds strange. Uncle David continued. We've never met. But we'd really like to. We want you to live with us. We don't have children of our own. We're almost 50. We've been married for 20 years. And we've always dreamed of having a daughter. We've already talked to your parents. They agreed to the adoption. The papers have been signed. Of course. They agree. Relieving themselves of responsibility, completely, that was their dream. After all, if you don't mind, we'll come in a couple of days to get to know each other. And then it's up to you. Okay. I managed to say. They arrived exactly 2 days later. Aunt Linda was a short woman with soft features and kind brown eyes. Uncle David was a large man with a beard and a warm smile. They were ordinary people without pretense. Kira. My aunt hugged me. And I didn't pull away. I'm so glad to see you. We sat in the meeting room. They told their stories honestly and without embellishment. Uncle David works as an electrician. Aunt Linda is a nurse. They live in a private house in a village near Cincinnati. Kira. If you come with us. It's forever. Uncle David said. We want to adopt you for real. You will be our daughter. Aunt Linda took out her phone. This is our house. A one-story house with a plot of land and a yard. Apple trees in the backyard. Then she showed me a photo of a room. This will be yours. We've already started renovating. A room. Light blue walls. A large window. A desk. A bookshelf. A cozy bed with a patchwork quilt. It's beautiful. I said sincerely. So, will you come with us? I looked at them, trying to figure out if this was another scam. But they weren't promising mountains of gold or demanding gratitude. They just wanted me. I'm going. 3 days later, they picked me up. I threw my bag of things in the trunk of their old pickup truck and said goodbye to my friends. I never went back to the center. The house was even better than the photos. My room was a fairy tale. And most importantly, there were no other children. Just me. My aunt and uncle didn't pry or demand I open up. They just lived. We had dinner together, soup. A main course. And tea. They asked about school. Helped with my homework. And bought me decent clothes and textbooks. 3 months later, the adoption was finalized. I took their last name. Peterson. I gave up my old name without regret. Why did I need a reminder of the family that threw me out? The old Kira was gone. I became someone new. Kira Peterson. Uncle David helped me set up an old computer in my room. And that's when I found my talent. It turned out I had a knack for programming. I started with simple scripts. Then made games and solved puzzles. It felt so natural. As if I was born for it. At 15, my aunt and uncle enrolled me in a local tech program and also signed me up for courses at the University of Cincinnati. I was the youngest there, but I picked everything up quickly. My teacher told me, you have a natural talent for algorithms. I started competing in Olympiads, first at the local level, then the regional level. I won prizes one after another. The thrill wasn't in the trophies, but in the fact that I was finally seen not as a troubled teenager from a shelter, but as a talented person. My aunt and uncle were proud of me in a way my biological parents never were. They came to every competition, took photos of me with my trophies, and bragged to the neighbors. It was weird at first. Adults who actually cared. In all these years, not a word from my biological family. Not on my birthday. Not on New Year's. They had crossed me out and forgotten about me. Sometimes I wondered how Jacob and Ethan were doing. But I pushed those thoughts away. What did it matter? I graduated from high school with honors and got a perfect score on my computer science AP exam. I got into university on a scholarship. At graduation, Aunt Linda cried. Uncle David snapped photos, like a proud dad. We're so proud of you. My dear. My aunt hugged me. You deserved it. Uncle added. I realized that these people, who weren't even blood relatives, we were happier with my success than the people who gave birth to me. At university, I threw myself headlong into my studies. While my classmates were partying and drinking, I sat in computer labs, working on projects and starting to freelance, building websites, apps, and chatbots. The money started coming in nicely. By my third year, I was earning more than many adults. I started helping my aunt and uncle, paying the utility bills and buying new appliances. They resisted, saying, "No, we can do it ourselves." But I insisted. They saved me. Now it's my turn. The therapist I saw in my first year really helped. I realized my loneliness wasn't because I was broken. The pain of being abandoned was so intense that it was easier to keep everyone at bay. I never made any close friends. But at least I stopped snapping at everyone. Hackathons became my passion. From university competitions to national ones, I was always at the top. The prize money piled up. And my name in the tech community gained traction. Then, at 20, everything changed. I won the National Tech Innovator Award, a huge national hackathon. My personal prize was about $11. Ling ling ling. But it wasn't about the money. I was noticed. Major companies like Google, Meta, and Microsoft were reaching out. Journalists were clamoring for interviews. My face was everywhere. A talented developer from Ohio. Winner of a federal hackathon. A rising star of American tech. A month after the victory, I was sitting at my aunt and uncle's house, coding something on my laptop. The doorbell rang. My aunt went to answer it. And I heard a voice that made me cringe. "We've come to see Kira." It was Sarah Miller. 8 years of silence. And there she was, standing in the doorway. She came out into the hallway. My mother and Ethan. He was 22. Almost 6 feet tall. But I recognized him right away. Kira. My mother beamed as if she were just a friend. "My God. You've grown up so much." "Hi. Little sister." Ethan was beaming too. "We're so happy to see you." I was silent. After 8 years, they showed up as if nothing had happened. "You haven't thought about me for 8 years. I finally managed to say, "You never called once." "Oh. Kira. What are you saying? We were so busy. But we were always thinking about you. That's why we came." "Yeah," I replied. "Right after you found out about the hackathon and the money. What a coincidence." My mother's face twitched. "It wasn't about the money. Of course. You came because you understood that I have prospects now, and you can ask for help." "How can you say that?" She started crying. "We're family." "Family?" I chuckled. "I learned what family is from you. When you abandoned me." Aunt Linda stood between us. "I think it's time for you to go." My mother gave me an offended look and left, as if I had betrayed her. A couple of days later, my father called. His voice was tired. "I heard about your success. I'm proud of you. Kira, I'm in Germany now. If you want, I can help you move and study here." "I'm not ready to talk to you," I said. "I understand. But think about it." Jacob, now 24, also in Germany with his father, texted me. "Hi. Kerr. Maybe you could add me on Facebook. We'll start chatting little by little." After 8 years of silence, he was bored. I blocked his number. Another 2 years passed. I was at my university graduation. A diploma with honors. The assembly hall was packed. When my name was announced, the hall erupted in applause. The dean presented a special certificate for outstanding achievements. Kira Peterson embodies the best qualities of our graduates. A bright future awaits her in the tech industry. I took the microphone. I want to thank my teachers for their knowledge. And most importantly, my parents, Linda and David Peterson, who believed in me and gave me a chance. Everything I've achieved is thanks to them. They showed me what true love is. My aunt was crying. My uncle was beaming with pride. As we left the hall, I spotted them, my mother, father, Jacob, and Ethan. They somehow got wind of the graduation and showed up uninvited. They came up to me after the ceremony. "We've always been proud of you." My father tried to hug me. "You could have thanked us, too." My mother added, "We gave you life." "If I thanked you, I'd have to tell you how you abandoned me in court 10 years ago." "Kira, you have to understand." My mother pleaded. "It was better for everyone this way. I will never understand you and will never communicate with you. We are family." Jacob tried to reason. "No. Linda and David Peterson are my family. You are strangers with the same DNA. You can't stay angry forever." Ethan shook his head. "If I want to communicate, I will find you. But for now, stay away from me." I turned and went off to celebrate with my real parents. Now I work at a tech company's San Francisco office. The salary is such that I can afford anything. I help my aunt and uncle. I bought them a new car and paid for renovations on their house. On Sundays, I come home for soup and conversation. Just like in a normal family. Sometimes I think about my biological relatives. But without the pain, they're just no one. It's an empty space. And that's okay. Story 2. You should have married for convenience. Do as you please. That's when I decided to take a desperate step. My husband left me and my sick daughter and went off with his mistress. I should have married for convenience. But now I have no money and no husband. You fool. Do whatever you want. The mother declared. Finding myself in a hopeless situation, I decided to take a desperate step. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and leave any comment. Your support helps us grow the channel and share even more stories with you. Enjoy listening. Alla had already given up hope for anything good in her life. She married very young, and to a guy who was incredibly popular with girls. So, when he proposed, she blurted out, yes, before he could finish. The competition effect kicked in. Alla lived with her husband for the entire 10 years. She thought her life was going quite well, studying at university, meeting friends, having fun. And then her daughter, Inga, was born. For some reason, Alla was initially convinced she would only have one child. And so it turned out, Inga grew up weak and sickly. The mother kept taking her daughter on sick leave and eventually quit. Now the small family was entirely dependent on her father and husband. Alla's parents disliked their son-in-law. They believed he should have been more compassionate and supportive of his wife. No. Andre honestly gave Alia almost his entire paycheck and did the hardest work. Move furniture. Fetch bags from the store. That's all. Another problem was that there was never enough money. Alla was forced to work part-time. She took on everything. She spent nights writing term papers for students, knitting children's clothes to order, even growing houseplants to sell. Every spare penny went to Inga. For her own clothes, Alla either sewed them herself or bought them at secondhand sales. And, of course, whenever the girl fell ill again, the young woman spent sleepless nights at her bedside and was exhausted during the day. But she still did all the housework. She ran to the store, cooked, and cleaned, and, despite everything, Andre left the family, heading off to an unknown destination. His mother coldly explained to her daughter-in-law over the phone that a sick child was a trial not every man could handle. And her son had already held out for too long. Alla was left with meager child support payments, which she tried to save but couldn't manage. The young woman was forced to return to work. Fortunately, her grandparents agreed to look after the girl. There was no way she could send the little girl to kindergarten. I told you. You should have married for convenience. Her mother repeated, and now Alla agreed with her. However, she thought there would never be any personal happiness in her life. If Inga wasn't wanted by her biological father, what could she say about other men? But it turned out Alla was wrong. That summer, Alla's mother took her little girl to a children's resort in Yevpatoria. Every penny counted. The money was primarily earmarked for treatment. And then for everything else? Alla didn't notice that a middle-aged man had been watching her and Inga for several days. One day, they were sitting in the cafeteria. Inga had always been a picky eater, and her mother bought one meal for both of them. The girl ate first, while Alla made do with what was left, thinking she had enough. That's when Alexei sat down at their table. He didn't utter any of the banal phrases that would have marked the beginning of a holiday romance. Allie would undoubtedly have become wary and withdrawn. Alexei said he'd overheard a snippet of a conversation between mother and daughter, and realized they were from the same town. He lived in the same city. He'd just arrived. Didn't know anything yet. And was asking him if he could give him some pointers on where to go and what to see. He seemed very polite and well-mannered. And little by little, Alla opened up. From that day on, a wonderful change began for Inga. Her mother, who had previously sighed and refused to buy her cotton candy or a few peaches, now didn't even open her wallet. Uncle Lyosha was always inviting them somewhere. They'd go on a boat ride, go on an amusement park, or hang out in a cafe. He'd said, "Please don't refuse to be my companions, and let me cover the expenses. I'm a lonely man. I have no one to spend money on except myself. And that's boring. It would give me great joy to spoil the child even a little." Inga was used to receiving gifts for her birthday and holidays like New Year's or Easter. Now Uncle Leisha literally showered her with little things so dear to a child's heart. All sorts of trinkets, like shell buzas, shells with the sound of the sea, coral on a stand, badges, magnets, and boxes filled her nightstand. And the girl looked at the man with rapturous eyes. They flew back together. The flight was overnight. Inga was already nodding off at the airport. She didn't remember the flight at all. And her mother later told her that Uncle Lyosha carried her from the plane to the taxi, and a few weeks after their return, Alexei proposed to Alla. And the young woman, remembering her mother's words about marrying for money, gave her consent. She knew she would hardly find a better stepfather for her daughter or a husband who would care for her as much. Alexei turned out to be a wealthy man. He had his own business and was quite successful. Ala and Inga settled into a large apartment in one of the city's most prestigious neighborhoods. The girl's treatment issue was resolved once and for all. Now Inga went to sanatoriums twice a year. And soon her health improved significantly. It took Ala a long time to get used to the fact that she could afford to buy the food she wanted and the clothes that suited her. Her appearance quickly improved. She looked younger and became a very attractive and well-groomed woman, attracting the attention of men. Ali's female acquaintances envied her, and she herself repeatedly told herself that her mother had been right. Living in abundance was very comfortable. But as the years went by, Ali began to feel something was missing. Alexei worked a lot, and Ali began to call their marriage loneliness for two. Inga no longer caused problems. Ali herself had a job, but she wasn't giving it her all. In the evenings, there was time for friends, the gym, and shopping. But the woman wanted more. Old age would soon creep in, and it would be foolish to think about romance. But while the spark still burned in her soul, she wanted to get everything she could out of life. When we desperately want something, fate often gives us a chance. And what Ala had no hope for happened? She fell in love without even realizing she was repeating the mistake of her youth. She was stepping on the same rake twice. He was a psychologist, teaching courses that Ala had started attending, hoping to gain self-discovery. He was also incredibly handsome, and the students were smitten with him. Leonid was younger than Ala, and indeed, younger than almost all the women in the class. But he was so understanding, it seemed he could peer into the very depths of a woman's soul. Never judge. Always find justification and explanation for even the most insane act. How could she resist? Everything unfolded unnoticed. And Ala, who at first expected to find a healer in Leonid, a cure for her wounded heart, then simply a friend. I didn't even notice how she began cheating on her husband. And somehow she didn't feel guilty. In recent years, Alexei had become something of a father figure to her. She knew he loved her unconditionally, and she arrogantly believed he would only be happy if she were happy. Of course, she didn't tell her husband about her escapades, but she didn't see it as a great tragedy if he ever found out about them. Inga, for example, adored her stepfather. He had become a complete father figure to her, and there could have been complications. But by that point, the girl had graduated from high school and moved to another city to attend university. So, she could only tell her everything when Ala was ready to leave for her lover. The woman had been hesitant to do so. She was now basking in her happiness, enjoying the love of two men, and believing that life had finally rewarded her for everything she had endured. But Leonid insisted that Ala would still have to file for divorce. Then, completely unexpectedly, Alexei was accused of serious financial fraud and faced a substantial prison sentence. For Ala, this was a bolt from the blue. She had often jokingly reproached her husband for being too honest and punctual for a businessman, for never taking advantage of a competitor's weakness, or for profiting from the helplessness of others or the naivety of a budding entrepreneur. Alexei shrugged with a slight smile. We have enough, he told his wife. Climbing to the next level of business means becoming a predator, trampling on the interests of others, not allowing yourself human feelings. That's alien to me. So Ala found it as difficult to believe her husband's guilt as she found it to be that a deer had suddenly started eating meat. Leonid tried to convince the woman, this is the perfect time to file for divorce. There's a compelling reason. While Alexei is serving his sentence, we don't even have to divide the property. He and Ala will get married and live here, in this house. It's mean, Ala said. Alexei offered me a helping hand just when I was in a really tough spot. And it turns out that I'm betraying him at his most difficult moment. I could never forgive myself for that. And Inga, I know that. She would turn away from me forever. Ali was very good with Leonid. It was as if she were reliving her wild youth, when you could splash barefoot through puddles and steal kisses somewhere in the park. But all this only brought her happy moments, because she knew she had a home. And now, with Alexei about to disappear from her life, it was as if all the warmth had been blown out of the house by a cold wind. So, it turns out my efforts to free you were in vain, Leonid asked. You told me so much about how you were sick of family life. What's going on? What does this have to do with you? And Ala, on a hunch, quietly turned on recording on her smartphone. Leonid explained that he'd made a deal with Alexei's secretary, promised the girl the moon, and she'd arranged everything. Alexei's signatures appeared on forged documents. A significant sum of money had been transferred to the right account. So now, when we get married, we'll be wealthy people, said the lover. Aren't you happy I need to think it all over? Aya said quietly, not recognizing her own voice. Please, go home now. I'll call you. Well, you understand? Of course. That I told you all this, face to face. And if anything happens, I'll take back my words. There was even a hint of condescension in Leonid's voice. He believed he'd pulled off a brilliant gamble and had no doubt he'd get away with it. But most likely, Ala would come to her senses and appreciate what he'd done for her. Although, He was mostly trying for himself. I understand. The woman was almost whispering. Go away. Then everything will be later. Neither the heart drops, nor even a large glass of expensive cognac, could calm Alla down. Only now did it begin to dawn on her what she had done. She realized that all these years her husband had behaved impeccably. She and Inga could always rely on him. He had tenderly cared for them, and always put the interest of his girls above all else. Alla began to realize that she loved Alexei, and no one could replace him. But now she has only one choice. She must obey her husband in everything. And this recording she made will help clear him of the charges. If Lyosha can't forgive her, so be it. She must pay for her betrayal. And even if she has to go back to her parents and leave Alexei behind bars, she has no right to do so. That same day, Alla called the investigator handling her husband's case and arranged a meeting. Everything she had said was confirmed upon the first investigation. Both Leonid and the secretary, who had been chasing easy money, were deservedly punished. Alexei was quickly released. Never in her life had Alla felt so ashamed as she did in that moment when she was alone with her husband and had to look him in the eye. Just don't hate me, she told him. You'll be happy yet. You'll find your woman, and I realize too late that I truly love you. And that means I have to leave. But Alexei silently embraced her, held her close, and didn't let go. They stood like that for a long time, in the middle of the room, and the late sun, peering through the windows, flooded them with its light. Inga, who had arrived for winter break, eyed her parents suspiciously. Guys, you seem unusually happy. Come on. Get over it. What happened? It's nothing. Alla said, resting her head on Alexei's shoulder. I'm just so happy to have him.